Don't move. Tell me why you're crying over my husband's grave." The voice cut through the cold Portland air just as Marcus Brown pressed his trembling hand against the edge of the stone. He had been kneeling for so long his knees had gone numb, but that single sentence jolted every nerve awake. He turned slowly. Standing a few feet behind him was a woman wrapped in a wool coat the color of winter clouds, her posture tall and guarded, her chin held like someone used to protecting something precious and losing it. Claire Whitmore. He recognized her from the newspaper photos, the charity galas he'd sometimes glance at on TV in the break room at work. He never imagined he would see her here, in the quiet corner of Greenwood Park Cemetery where rowan trees lined the pathway and a small wooden wind chime hung from a branch above Daniel Whitmore's grave. The wind chime rattled softly now, a sound so gentle and out of place that it made Marcus's chest tighten even more. For a moment he couldn't speak. His throat was too thick, his breath too thin. He wiped his face with the back of his sleeve, embarrassed by the tears still gathering in his eyes. "Ma'am, you shouldn't be here," Claire said sharply, though her voice wavered just enough to reveal exhaustion beneath the ice. "You don't know him. And this is private." Marcus bowed his head. "I do know him," he whispered. "Not the way you did, but he saved my life." Her expression flickered, not softened, not yet, but shaken. "Explain." Marcus swallowed. He didn't want to say any of this. Not like this. Not to a woman already drowning in grief, but she deserved the truth, and Daniel deserved to be remembered accurately, not as a polished portrait hanging in an office downtown, but as the man who knelt beside a broken stranger in a freezing parking lot. 3 years ago, Marcus began quietly, my daughter and I were sleeping in my car off Powell Boulevard. The heater barely worked. She was 4 then. Her little fingers were blue. He paused, seeing the memory instead of the cemetery. People passed us all night. Some stared. Some crossed the lot to avoid us. Security told us to move twice. And then your husband stopped. The wind shifted, nudging the wooden chime into another soft rattle. Claire stood absolutely still, the grave between them like a barrier and a bridge all at once. "Daniel didn't ask questions," Marcus continued. "Didn't judge me, didn't call the police like others did. He just helped." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn motel key tag, Room 14, Maple Crest Inn. The faded red number reflected the weak winter light. "He gave us a place to stay, bought food for my daughter, slipped this into my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world." Marcus let out a shaky breath, and he said something I'll never forget. "When you get back on your feet, don't repay me, repay someone else." Claire's gaze shifted to the key tag, her eyes tightening with recognition, not of the object, but of the spirit behind it. "That sounds like him," she murmured before she could stop herself, but grief snapped the vulnerability shut as fast as it opened. "Even so," she said, stealing her tone, "this doesn't give you the right to come here without permission, to cry over his grave as if I lost him too." Marcus finished softly. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I know he belonged to you. I know he was your husband. But to me, he was hope, at a time when I had none left." Claire stiffened, as though caught between defending Daniel's memory and acknowledging the truth in Marcus's voice. In the distance, a groundskeeper's cart buzzed faintly, but the two of them remained suspended in a silence that belonged only to grief and gratitude. Marcus tucked the motel key back into his pocket and stood slowly, careful not to disrupt the small arrangement of fresh lilies at the base of the headstone. "I didn't come to intrude," he said, "only to say thank you. I promised I would come someday when my daughter was safe. She's 7 now, healthy. We have a place. I'm working 2 jobs. I just wanted him to know." Something trembled across Claire's face. She crossed her arms, not in defiance, but the way someone shields a wound that still bleeds beneath the surface. "You should leave," she said quietly, but without the earlier sharpness. I need space here." Marcus nodded. "Yes, ma'am." He took a step back, then paused, sensing there was more she wanted to say but couldn't. Her eyes lingered on the path where he would walk away, then back to him. "What's your name?" The question surprised them both. "Marcus Brown," he replied. "And your daughter?" "Lena." Claire looked down at the grave again, her voice barely audible. Daniel believed every person deserved dignity, even when the world didn't offer it. She hesitated, her grief cracking just a little at the edges. "Thank you for telling me." Marcus lowered his head respectfully. "Thank you for listening." As he walked toward the exit, the wind shifted once more. The wooden chime above Daniel's grave rang, not loud, not urgent, just a tender whisper of sound. Claire looked up at it, then at Marcus's retreating figure. For the first time in months, she wondered if her husband had left behind more than memories, if he had planted seeds of connection she was only now beginning to see. And Marcus, stepping out of the cemetery and into the gray Portland morning, carried with him the same thought he had carried for 3 years. "When I stand on my own, I will repay this kindness." Somehow, neither of them knew it yet, but their lives had just shifted quietly, irrevocably, in the soft chime of winter air above a man who believed in second chances. If this moment touched your heart even a little, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like Marcus's continue to be told. Marcus had walked nearly a mile from the cemetery before he realized he was still clutching the motel key tag in his coat pocket. The small piece of metal pressed into his palm like a reminder, or a question he wasn't ready to answer. The Portland sky hung low, a soft gray ceiling threatening rain, and the cold air bit at his cheeks as he crossed the quiet neighborhood streets toward the bus stop. He kept seeing Claire Whitmore's face in his mind, the faint tremble in her voice, the instinctive suspicion, the flicker of recognition when she heard the truth. He hadn't expected gratitude. He didn't expect forgiveness either, but he also hadn't expected her to ask his name. That simple gesture stayed with him more than anything else. The bus hissed as it pulled up, and Marcus stepped inside, dropping $2.80 into the machine. The driver nodded without expression. Marcus took a seat near the back, the kind where the heater barely worked and the window rattled whenever the bus hit a pothole. Portland in winter had a way of making a man feel smaller, especially a man who'd known cold so deeply that it lived in his bones. He closed his eyes but found no rest, only memories. 3 years earlier, the nights were quieter but sharper, the kind of cold that stole breath and carved its initials into your lungs. He had been parked behind a shuttered video rental store on Powell Boulevard, trying to keep little 4-year-old Lena warm by wrapping her in every piece of clothing he owned. Her tiny body had shivered so violently that Marcus thought her teeth might break. "Daddy, my hands hurt," she whispered that night. "I know, baby. I'm trying." He wasn't sure that was true. He wasn't sure he could keep trying when each day seemed to fold in on itself. The recession had taken his job. The eviction notice had taken their apartment. A string of temporary gigs had taken what little pride he had left. People walked past him with the weary tolerance of someone stepping over a fallen branch on the sidewalk, mild inconvenience, no more. But then, headlights had swept across the parking lot, and a man stepped out, a man with kind eyes and a wool coat, carrying a thermos of something warm. "You look like you could use a hand," the stranger said. Marcus had tried to refuse, shame burning his throat, but the man insisted, not forcefully, but with the quiet conviction of someone who believed that helping was simply the right thing to do. "My name's Daniel," he said. "Let's get your little girl someplace warm tonight. A warm motel room, a full belly for Lena, and a moment, just a moment, when Marcus felt human again." That was Daniel. Back on the bus in the present, Marcus blinked away the memory and looked out the scratched window. His stop approached, and he stepped off into the edge of a neighborhood where old brick duplexes leaned together like tired elders. His apartment building, Riverview Terrace, though it had neither a view nor a terrace, sat wedged between a laundromat and a convenience store. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of bleach and wet carpet. The radiator clanked with a half-hearted effort that warmed nothing. When Marcus unlocked his door, the soft sound of crayons scraping paper greeted him first. Lena sat cross-legged on the living room floor, drawing a picture of a house with a crooked chimney. Her curls bounced when she turned. "Daddy, you're home." Her smile always felt like sunlight, small but powerful. "Hey, sweetheart." Marcus set down his bag and knelt beside her. "What are you drawing today?" "A house with a big yard," she said proudly, "and a dog. Miss Lorraine said I'd be good at having a dog because I'm gentle with things that need care." Marcus smiled, though something inside him tightened. He didn't have the heart to tell her the landlord didn't allow pets and the yard wasn't real. "It's beautiful," he said instead. Lena squinted at him. "Daddy, did you cry today?" Children sense things adults pretended to hide. Marcus touched her cheek gently. "Maybe a little. Was it the man you told me about? The nice man from the motel?" He nodded. "I went to see where he rests." Lena crawled onto his lap. "Did you tell him thank you for us?" "I did." She rested her head on his chest. It was moments like these, fragile, sincere, that made Marcus wish life allowed them more room to breathe. When night fell, Lena fell asleep clutching her stuffed rabbit, and Marcus sat at the small kitchen table staring at the bills spread out before him. Rent was increasing again next month. His second job had cut hours. The doctor had warned him Lena's asthma would worsen if they couldn't improve the air quality in the apartment. The low-Surrey radiator barely worked. He needed help, real help, but pride was a stubborn companion. He remembered Claire's guarded eyes at the cemetery, the grief etched into her posture, the way she hugged her own arms as though holding broken pieces together. She had enough pain. He couldn't add his burdens to hers. Still, the memory of her asking his name whispered at the back of his thoughts like a door left slightly open. The next morning brought cold sharp enough to sting the lungs, and Marcus carried Lena to school in his arms because her breathing sounded tight again. On his way back home, he passed Miss Lorraine sweeping her porch. She was in her 70s, a retired nurse, and one of the few people who spoke to him like an equal. "Morning, Marcus," she called, tapping her broom. "You look like the Lord's been weighing on your shoulders today." "Just tired," he said. "No man that young gets tired from morning air," she replied. "That's worry, not fatigue." She set the broom aside, studying his face. "You went to see the widow, didn't you?" Marcus froze. "How did you?" "Honey, you've been practicing what you would say for weeks. Walls have ears in this neighborhood." She softened. "Did you tell her the truth?" "Yes." "And?" "I don't know," Marcus said honestly. "She believed me, maybe. But she asked me to leave." "She's grieving," Lorraine said gently. "Grief turns hearts into locked doors, but sometimes it leaves the key under the mat." Marcus almost laughed. "I don't think there's a key under that mat. Maybe not. But you keep hers. I see that card in your coat every day." Marcus looked away. Lorraine stepped closer. "Marcus, listen to me. You're a good father, but that child of yours can't breathe right in that freezing apartment. Pride doesn't keep a little girl warm." He felt the truth of it hit him in the chest. "If things get worse," she continued, "you call that woman. Not for you, for your daughter." Marcus nodded, though the decision still tasted complicated. That night, as Lena coughed in her sleep, Marcus sat awake, turning Claire's card over and over in his hand. The quiet of the apartment pressed in on him. "If things get worse," Lorraine had said. He feared they were already there. Somewhere across town, Claire Whitmore sat in her dim library with a fire burning low, staring at the framed photo of Daniel on the mantel. For the first time in months, she wasn't crying. She was thinking about the man in the cemetery, the motel key tag, and a kindness Daniel had never told her about. And though she didn't know why, she whispered into the empty room, "Marcus Brown," as if saying his name aloud might unlock a memory not yet made. Neither of them realized it, but the story Daniel began 3 years ago was stirring again, quietly, insistently, like the first soft chime of wind through wooden bells. The cold settled deep into the apartment that evening, not the kind that brushed the skin, but the kind that crept into the walls, the floors, the breath. Marcus had placed 2 towels along the base of the drafty windows and set Lena's small humidifier to its loudest setting, but nothing seemed to cut through the winter damp. She sat curled on the couch under a worn fleece blanket, coloring quietly, pausing every few moments to cough, a soft, raspy sound that made Marcus flinch each time. He watched her from the kitchen table where he sorted envelopes like a man organizing pieces of a sinking ship. Rent increase notice, medical bill, utility bill, a letter from school reminding him about an upcoming field trip he could not afford. The fluorescent light above him flickered, humming its own tired protest. Outside, a siren wailed faintly. The world kept moving, indifferent. Lena looked up. "Daddy, can we bake cookies tonight? Like the ones Miss Lorraine made?" He wanted to say yes. He wanted to say he could give her anything she wished for. Instead, he forced a smile. "Maybe this weekend, sweetheart. We're low on groceries right now." She nodded, accepting the answer with a softness that broke him a little. Children shouldn't learn scarcity so young. A sudden knock rattled the thin door. Miss Lorraine stood in the hallway holding a paper bag. "I brought some chicken noodle soup," she said, "and cornbread. I figured you two could use something warm." Marcus exhaled, grateful beyond words. "You didn't have to, I know," she interrupted, "but I wanted to." She glanced at Lena. "How's her breathing tonight?" "A little better," Marcus lied, then asked, "You busy tomorrow morning?" The old woman gave him a knowing look. "I'm never too busy to help. But Marcus, you know what I'm going to say." "I can't call her," he muttered. "Not unless there's no other way." Lorraine pressed her lips together. "When you've lived as long as I have, you learn that waiting until no other way just means the child suffers longer. Pride is a tax only the poor have to pay." After she left, the apartment felt even colder. Marcus tucked Lena into bed and sat beside her until she slept, her tiny breaths uneven, each one snagging like a broken zipper. He felt powerless, an emotion he wore too often these days. Later that night he stepped outside for air, pulling his coat tight. The sky was clear, sharp with stars. A group of teenagers walked past, laughing loudly, but one of them slowed, eyeing Marcus with that familiar blend of suspicion and disdain reserved for black men standing alone at night. The teen finally moved on, but the stare lingered. Marcus sighed. Portland had always been two cities, one for people who belonged everywhere, and one for people who belonged nowhere. He sat on the concrete steps and let the cold bite through him. He hadn't cried since the cemetery, but now emotion gathered behind his ribs like pressure behind a dam. He pressed his hands together. "Daniel," he whispered into the night, "I'm trying. I really am." The next morning greeted him with the sharp whistle of wind seeping through window cracks. Lena's coughing woke him before dawn. She sat up in bed, pale, her curls sticking to her forehead. "Daddy, it hurts when I breathe." That sentence punched through every barrier Marcus had. He scooped her into his arms, feeling the warmth of her small body through her pajamas, but also the subtle tremble of someone fighting for breath. At urgent care, the nurse frowned as she listened to Lena's lungs. "Her asthma's flaring," she said. "Do you have a working heater at home?" Marcus hesitated. "It's inconsistent." The nurse gave him a look that told him she understood exactly what that meant. "You need steady heat," she said gently, "and cleaner air. Asthma gets worse in damp, cold apartments. Do whatever you can to keep her warm." "I will," he whispered. He meant it, but meaning didn't fix appliances or raise wages. When they returned home, the hallway smelled of cigarette smoke and mold. The radiator hissed weakly. Lena's breathing was still strained. Marcus paced the kitchen, Claire's card on the counter. He picked it up, put it down, picked it up again. His hands shook. Calling her felt like crossing a line between survival and humiliation, and he wasn't sure he could pay the cost. That evening, he worked his janitorial shift downtown. The office building lobby gleamed marble floors, warm lighting, the faint scent of lemon polish. Wealth breathed differently here. It walked with ease, belonged without apology. While cleaning the elevators, a middle-aged white man in a suit stepped in, glanced at Marcus's uniform, and immediately clutched his briefcase tighter. Marcus stepped aside. Evening, sir. The man didn't answer. He stared straight ahead until the doors closed. Marcus had grown used to these encounters, small daily reminders that dignity was conditional for people like him. Later in the alley behind the building, he tossed trash into the dumpster just as freezing rain began to fall, stinging his cheeks. His phone buzzed. A text from Miss Lorraine. "How's my baby girl breathing tonight?" Marcus replied. "About the same." A pause then. "Marcus, that child needs warmth that apartment can't give. You know who can help." He stared at his phone for a long time. A car passed on the wet street, its headlights glinting off the puddles. Somewhere far across town, in a warm house with a fireplace, sat a woman whose life had brushed his only briefly but irrevocably. Claire Whitmore. He wondered what she was doing at that very moment, holding her husband's photo, sitting in silence with her grief, thinking of him the way he kept thinking of her. He wondered, too, what Daniel would have said if he were still alive. A man who stopped for strangers on icy nights. A man who believed in second chances. Repay someone else, Daniel had told him. But how did you repay kindness without first surviving long enough to pay it forward? The cold wind sharpened, slicing through his jacket. Marcus wiped his face, though he wasn't sure if the moisture came from rain or from the pressure building behind his eyes. He walked back inside and finished his shift. By the time he reached home, Lena was asleep on the couch, breathing shallowly. Miss Lorraine sat beside her, knitting needles quiet in her lap. "It's getting worse, Marcus," she said softly, not unkindly. "You don't have until next week. You barely have until tomorrow." Marcus sank to his knees beside the couch. Lena stirred and placed a small hand on his arm. "Daddy, my chest feels tight." He pressed his forehead to her tiny fingers. Pride cracked wide open, shame pooled with it, but love raw, desperate, furious love rose higher than both. He stood, walked to the kitchen table, picked up Claire Whitmore's card, and closed his eyes. His thumb hovered over the phone screen. One breath, another. Then he dialed. The line rang once, twice, and then, "Hello?" Her voice, fragile and controlled. Marcus swallowed hard. "Miss Whitmore, it's Marcus. From the cemetery." A pause. "Is everything all right?" "No," he whispered. "My daughter. She's not getting better. The apartment is too cold. I don't know what else to do." Silence. Then a shift, something like resolve, or instinct, or compassion rekindled. "Send me your address," she said. "I'm on my way." Marcus lowered the phone, breath shaking. A strange warmth spread across his chest, not relief exactly, but the first hint of a door opening where he had seen only walls. And outside, through cracks in the old window frames, the winter wind whispered against the glass like the faintest echo of wooden chimes. Claire arrived faster than Marcus expected. Barely 20 minutes after he ended the call, headlights swept across the cracked pavement outside the apartment building. The powerful engine of her Mercedes SUV hummed low, a sound utterly foreign to the weary neighborhood. Marcus stood at the window, heart pounding, watching the vehicle slow to a stop beneath the flickering street lamp. For a moment he considered turning off the lights, pretending they weren't home. Pride, old, stubborn, heavy, rose again like a reflex. But then Lena coughed in her sleep, a strained, wheezing sound that made his decision for him. He opened the door just as Claire hurried up the stairs. She looked different than she had at the cemetery, still elegant, still composed, but with a fierce purpose in her stride. Her hair was pulled back beneath a wool hat, and her gloves were dusted with freezing rain. "Where's Lena?" she asked immediately. No judgment, no hesitation, only concern. Marcus stepped aside. "Inside. Thank you for coming. I didn't know who else." "You called," Claire said. "That's enough." She brushed past him and knelt beside the couch where Lena lay bundled under 2 blankets. The little girl's breathing was fast, shallow, a high whistle catching at the end of each inhale. Claire's face tightened. "How long has she been like this?" "It got worse today," Marcus admitted. "The doctor said we needed better heat, but the radiator. This place is freezing, Claire touched Lena's forehead and frowned. Her skin is cold. Marcus swallowed. I've tried. I know you have, she said gently, cutting off his apology. Miss Lorraine emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. I've been sitting with her, she said. Child's trying her best, but the air here's no good. Claire stood. We need to get her somewhere warm immediately. Marcus stiffened, instinctively protective. I don't want to impose. Claire turned to him, her voice firm but not unkind. This isn't about imposing. This is about your daughter being able to breathe. Marcus looked at Lena, her small chest rising unevenly, her curls damp from sweat, and something inside him finally surrendered. He nodded silently. Claire moved quickly, tucking the blankets around the little girl and lifting her gently into her arms. Lena stirred, eyelids fluttering, but Claire soothed her with a whisper. Shh, sweetheart. We're taking you somewhere warm. Marcus grabbed Lena's inhaler, her medication, and her stuffed rabbit. Miss Lorraine touched his arm. Call me when you get settled, she said, and don't you dare argue with that woman. She's got more sense right now than you do. Claire led the way down the dim stairwell, her boots clicking softly on the concrete. Marcus followed close behind, carrying the small bag of essentials. The cold night hit them hard when they stepped outside, and Marcus felt ashamed that he had allowed his daughter to sleep in such conditions. Claire opened the back door of the SUV with one smooth motion. When Marcus hesitated, she said, Buckle her in, please. The warmth inside the car was immediate, enveloping, almost shocking compared to the apartment. As Marcus strapped Lena into the car seat, she blinked groggily and looked between them. Daddy. Where are we going? Someplace warm, baby, Marcus whispered. You just rest. Claire drove, navigating the slick roads with steady hands. Streetlights flashed through the windshield, illuminating her profile focused, calm, touched with a sadness Marcus could feel even without looking directly at her. He cleared his throat. Miss Whitmore, I didn't mean for this to become your responsibility. It isn't, she said quietly. It's something I'm choosing to do. Why? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Claire kept her eyes on the road. Because my husband wouldn't forgive me if I ignored the child of a man he helped, and because no parent should have to face this kind of fear alone. Marcus looked down at his hands. I'm sorry if calling you brought up painful memories. Some memories are painful, she said, but not all of them should remain untouched. They fell into silence again. The city blurred past in streaks of orange and white. Claire turned off the main road, entering a quiet neighborhood lined with tall fir trees and holiday lights that glowed gently in the cold. When the wrought iron gates of her estate came into view, Marcus felt his breath hitch. He had never been this close to her world, this world. Claire tapped a button, and the gates opened slowly. The driveway curved between carefully manicured hedges toward a large stone house wrapped in soft golden light. It looked like something from a life Marcus had only ever glimpsed from sidewalks. The SUV rolled to a stop near the side entrance. A man in a thick coat, one of the staff, stepped outside, surprise flashing across his face at the sight of Marcus and Lena, but Claire spoke before he could question anything. Prepare the guest house. Turn up the heat, fresh linens, warm towels, and bring the portable air purifier. Right away, Mrs. Whitmore. Claire carried Lena inside the guest house, a cozy two-bedroom cottage separate from the main residence. It was warm instantly, as though the air itself had been waiting for them. The lights glowed softly. The furniture was comfortable, the smell faintly of cedar and cinnamon. Marcus stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. He didn't belong here. Every instinct screamed it. Yet here he was, with no other option. Claire laid Lena on the bed and adjusted her blanket. She needs rest and warmth. Once she's breathing easier, we can figure out next steps. Marcus struggled for words. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to. She stepped back, studying him. But I need to ask something, Marcus. When you showed up at Daniel's grave, was this your plan? To gain access to me? To get help? His heart dropped. No. Then what brought you there? Marcus rubbed a hand over his face. Gratitude. And guilt. And maybe the foolish hope that if I stood where he rests, I'd feel less lost. Claire exhaled slowly, tension easing from her shoulders. I believe you. She turned toward the door. Rest tonight. If you need anything, call the house line. Marcus watched her leave, the door closing softly behind her. He sank into the armchair beside Lena's bed, pressing his forehead to his fists. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, whether this was a lifeline or a mistake that would cost him dearly. But he knew one thing with absolute clarity. His daughter was finally warm. And warmth, after all they had endured, felt like the first breath after drowning. As Lena slept, her breathing steadier than it had been in days, Marcus whispered into the dim room, "Thank you, Daniel. I hope I'm doing right." Outside, somewhere near the main house, a wind chime made of wood and brass swayed gently in the breeze, its notes drifting through the night like the echo of a promise not yet fulfilled. Morning light drifted gently through the curtains of the guest house, soft and warm in a way Marcus had forgotten mornings could be. For a moment he didn't remember where he was. The sheets beneath his hands were too clean, the silence too peaceful, the air too warm. Then he heard the small, steady breathing beside him and turned to see Lena curled safely under the quilted blanket, her stuffed rabbit pressed against her cheek. No wheezing, no coughing, just sleep, the kind of sleep children were meant to have. Relief washed over him so deeply it left him dizzy. He sat up slowly, letting the room come into focus. The guest house was brighter in daylight, pale blue walls, polished wood floors, a woven rug beneath the bed, books neatly stacked on a shelf. A small vase held a sprig of eucalyptus, its clean scent hanging in the air. Everything felt intentional, cared for, tended. He wondered if Claire had arranged it herself, or if Daniel had once done so. Either way, the space felt gently lived in, as though it existed to make others feel safe. Marcus stood and stretched, listening for any sound from outside. A low hum came from the small air purifier by the nightstand. He checked Lena's forehead, cool and dry. Her chest rose and fell evenly. He swallowed hard, emotion tightening his throat. She hadn't breathed like this in days. In their apartment, the air had felt heavy, stagnant, like a weight she couldn't lift. Here, her little lungs moved freely. He walked to the kitchenette, unsure whether he was allowed to use anything, and poured himself a glass of water. The glass felt too delicate in his hand. Everything here felt too delicate, too not his. A soft knock came at the door. Marcus stiffened, instinctively bracing himself, then opened the door to find a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a neat gray bun. She wore an apron over a blouse, holding a tray with breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, a bowl of fruit, and a small pitcher of orange juice. "Good morning, Mr. Brown," she said, offering a gentle smile. "Mrs. Whitmore asked me to bring breakfast and to check on your daughter." Marcus blinked, taken aback. "She's better, much better," the woman nodded. "I'm glad to hear it. I'm Harriet Housekeeping. Please call if you need anything." As she handed him the tray, Marcus felt a flush of embarrassment. "I'm sorry for the trouble." "It's no trouble," Harriet said softly. "This house saw a lot of quiet after Mr. Whitmore passed. It's nice to have warmth again." She hesitated, then added, Mrs. Whitmore hasn't slept this peacefully in months." Marcus didn't know how to respond. Harriet's eyes softened. "Eat something, and let the little one rest." After she left, Marcus brought the tray inside and set it on the table. The eggs steamed gently. The toast was golden, not burned at the edges like the ones he made on their old stovetop. It felt unreal, like stepping into someone else's life. Lena stirred not long after. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, this bed is soft." "It is," Marcus said, smiling. "How do you feel?" She breathed deep, testing her lungs. Her eyes widened. "Better." "Good," he whispered, brushing her curls back. "That's all that matters." When she saw the breakfast tray, she gasped. "Is that for us?" "Looks like it." She crawled across the bed and climbed onto the chair, kicking her legs as she ate fruit and toast with delighted concentration. Seeing her so content made Marcus's chest tighten again, not with fear this time, but with an ache he couldn't fully name. He had forgotten what normal looked like. He had forgotten what safety felt like. A little before noon, Claire appeared at the door. Marcus straightened immediately. She wore a simple cream sweater, jeans, and a dark coat. Her hair was still slightly damp, as if she had just come in from the cold. She glanced first at Lena, then at Marcus. "How is she?" "Better," Marcus said. "Much better. Thank you again. I don't think I can ever repay you." Claire shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. Children shouldn't suffer because of adults' circumstances. And Daniel would have wanted me to help." The mention of Daniel hung in the air between them. Claire stepped inside, looking around the room as if checking that everything was in order. "If you need anything else, more blankets, medication, food, let me know." "You've already done so much," Marcus said. "I don't want to overstay our welcome." Her expression shifted, not irritation, but something close to concern. "This isn't a stay. It's support. You called me because your daughter needed safety. As long as that need is real, you're welcome here." Marcus lowered his gaze. "People don't usually take in strangers." "You're not a stranger," Claire said quietly. "Not anymore." Lena hopped off her chair and walked up to Claire with her stuffed rabbit. "Thank you for the warm house," she said solemnly. Claire knelt and tucked a loose curl behind Lena's ear. "You're very welcome, sweetheart. Breathing easier today?" "Yes. Good. That's what's important." When she stood again, her eyes briefly met Marcus's, and something passed between them, something wordless, delicate, not romantic but undeniably human. A recognition, a shared understanding of loss and hope, holding each other in fragile balance. "I'll give you time to settle," she said. "But please don't isolate yourselves. If you're staying here, you should know you're not a burden." Marcus's breath shuddered. "I appreciate that." After she left, Marcus sank onto the edge of the bed. He was grateful, more grateful than he could articulate, but that gratitude mixed with unease. This world was not built for people like him, and stepping into it, even temporarily, felt like trespassing. He spent the afternoon fixing small things around the guest house to ease his discomfort, tightening a loose cabinet hinge, adjusting the squeak of a door, replacing a dim bulb. Harriet found him once and shook her head with amusement. "You don't need to work," she said. "You're a guest." "Helping makes me feel less out of place," he admitted. Harriet studied him. "For what it's worth, the house feels lighter with you two here." The hours moved gently. Lena drew pictures at the kitchen table, one of a house with a chimney, another of 3 stick figures holding hands. Marcus tried not to dwell on the symbolism. As evening approached, he stepped outside for a breath of crisp air. The estate grounds were quiet, blanketed in winter stillness. Lights glowed softly from the main house. In the distance, a wind chime swayed made of wood and brass, its tones low and warm. The sound carried across the cold night, brushing against him like a memory he didn't yet understand. Marcus closed his eyes. "What am I doing here?" he whispered. He didn't know the answer. But inside the guest house, his daughter slept in warmth, and for now, that was enough. Ryan Whitmore arrived on a sharp Tuesday afternoon, the kind when the winter sun felt like a decoration rather than a source of heat. Marcus didn't know he was coming. He had just stepped out of the guest house to shake crumbs from a rug when a sleek navy sedan pulled up the circular driveway near the main house. A tall man climbed out, broad-shouldered, well-dressed, with the expression of someone perpetually assessing the worth of everything in his field of view. For a moment Marcus froze, rug in hand. The man's gaze cut toward him almost immediately, sharp and appraising. Marcus recognized the look. He'd seen it 1,000 times. The look that asked what business a man like him had in a place like this. The man spoke first. "Who are you?" His voice was controlled, but the undertone carried an edge, polished steel beneath calm water. Marcus lowered the rug. "Marcus Brown. And what exactly are you doing here?" Marcus hesitated. Claire invited us. My daughter's been sick. The man's jaw shifted with the smallest hint of skepticism. I see. The way he said it made it clear he didn't see at all, or didn't want to. Claire emerged from the main house just then, walking briskly across the stone path. Ryan, I didn't expect you until tomorrow. Change of plans, he said, leaning in for a brief, restrained embrace. Then he nodded toward Marcus. Are you going to introduce me to? Claire turned to Marcus. This is my brother-in-law, Ryan, Daniel's younger brother. She faced Ryan again. Ryan, this is Marcus, and his daughter, Lena. They're staying in the guest house for a few days. If Marcus had hoped for a flicker of warmth, he found none. Ryan's expression tightened. Staying here? Yes, Claire said. Lena's asthma was worsening in their old apartment. She's breathing better now. Ryan slid his hands into his coat pockets. And why is that our concern? Claire stiffened. Because Daniel once helped them. And because helping doesn't expire when the person doing the helping is gone. Marcus felt the weight of being spoken about like a problem rather than a person, but he kept his posture calm. He'd learned long ago how to stay still when the world tried to shrink him. I don't intend to impose, he said carefully. As soon as Lena is stronger. We'll figure things out later, Claire interrupted gently, directing the words toward Marcus but keeping her eyes on Ryan. For now, they're here, safely. Ryan studied Marcus again, his eyes narrowing with a kind of intellectual hostility. I can't help noticing, he said, that every time people in need appear around this family, they end up becoming long-term furnishings. Claire's voice lowered. That's unfair. Is it? Ryan replied. Or is it simply accurate? Marcus felt the old instinct rise, the urge to disappear, to apologize, to make himself smaller so others could feel larger. Before he could speak, Lena burst out of the guest house with Harriet behind her. Daddy, she called, waving a drawing in the air. I made another house. She stopped short when she noticed Ryan. Her smile faltered as she slipped behind Marcus's leg, peeking out with wide eyes. Ryan's expression shifted, not softer, just less confrontational. This is your daughter, he said. Lena, Marcus replied, resting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Ryan gave a curt nod, as if Lena's existence clarified something he hadn't expected, but the tension didn't lift. Claire took Ryan aside, her voice low but firm. Marcus couldn't hear the words, but the tone carried frustration and something else. Exhaustion, maybe. He couldn't blame her. She'd lost her husband only months ago. Now family conflict simmered at her doorstep. After a few minutes, Ryan stepped away and headed toward the main house. We'll talk later, he told Claire before disappearing behind the heavy front door. Claire remained still for a moment, letting the cold air steady her. Then she approached Marcus. I'm sorry, she said simply. Ryan can be protective. Marcus nodded. He doesn't know me. I understand. He doesn't know himself right now, she murmured. He and Daniel were close. Losing Daniel changed him more than he'll admit. Grief hits people differently, Marcus said softly. The acknowledgement surprised her. Something softened in her eyes. Yes, she said. It does. She glanced at Lena's drawing. Is that your new house? Lena shook her head. It's this house, she said, but with a bigger yard. And a dog. Marcus laughed under his breath, embarrassed. She likes to imagine. There's nothing wrong with imagining, Claire said. Sometimes it keeps us going. She excused herself to speak with the staff, and Marcus carried Lena back inside the guest house. But Ryan's disapproval hung in the air like the smell of smoke long after a fire. Later that afternoon, as Marcus tightened the loose hinge on a cabinet door, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Harriet watching him with a gentle frown. You don't have to fix things here, she said. It's my job. Marcus shrugged lightly. I like staying busy. Harriet hesitated. Ryan can be tough. Don't let it worry you too much. I've dealt with worse, Marcus said truthfully. People make assumptions. People always do, Harriet replied. But they're not always right. In the evening, Marcus took a short walk around the property while Lena napped. Snow had begun to fall, thin flakes drifting lazily across the sky. The wind chime near the main house swayed with a hollow, nostalgic melody. The trees around the estate stood tall and dark, guardians of a world he still wasn't sure he belonged in. As he walked, he saw Ryan through one of the windows, speaking to Claire in the warm glow of the study. His gestures were sharp, his stance rigid. Claire's posture was calmer but tense. Marcus looked away, feeling the faint heat of shame crawl up his neck, not because he'd done anything wrong, but because the conflict existed at all because of him. He had seen this before, the way generosity became complicated when filtered through money, grief, and family loyalties. He knew he was an intruder on a fault line already cracking. When he returned to the guest house, Lena was awake and coloring again. She looked up with a bright smile. "Daddy, look, I made our old car with wings so it can fly anywhere." Marcus crouched beside her. "That's really something, sweetheart. Do you think cars can fly someday?" she asked. "Maybe," he said, brushing her hair. "One day." But as he watched her draw, he felt a knot forming inside him. Ryan wasn't wrong to question him. People in Marcus's position were often suspected of wanting something they didn't, and even though he didn't want anything beyond warmth and safety for his daughter, he knew how easily stories could be twisted. He had no power, no wealth, no place in this world, and no ability to defend himself if Ryan decided he was a threat to Claire. That night, as Lena slept peacefully, Marcus sat on the edge of the bed listening to the wind chime echo faintly through the cold night. He whispered into the dark, "Daniel, I don't know if I'm helping or hurting by being here, but I'll leave if it protects them." He rested his head in his hands. He didn't know that in the main house, Claire stood at her window, looking down toward the guest house with an expression caught between worry and something that felt like hope. And he didn't know that Ryan, watching from the shadows of the study, had already decided he needed to uncover everything about Marcus Brown, no matter what the truth cost. The next morning arrived with a soft layer of snow on the estate grounds, turning the world into a quiet white canvas. Marcus stood at the window of the guest house, watching the flakes drift lazily down. For the first time in months, Lena was able to sleep in. Her breathing was steady, untroubled. He didn't know how to express the magnitude of relief that brought him. It felt like someone had pressed a gentle hand to his back, telling him he could rest, if only for a moment. A knock sounded at the door. When Marcus opened it, Claire stood outside, bundled in a navy coat, her cheeks tinted pink from the cold. In her hands she carried a stack of folders and a small thermos. "I brought something for you," she said. Marcus blinked. "For me?" She nodded and stepped inside. The warmth of the guest house wrapped around them as she placed the folders on the kitchen table. "Coffee," she added, handing him the thermos. "I figured you might need it." He didn't realize how cold his hands were until the heat of the thermos warmed them. "Thank you," he murmured, unsure how else to respond. Claire gestured toward the folders. "These are materials from the Daniel Whitmore Community Center. It's the non-profit Daniel started before he passed. They're beginning a new outreach program, and I think you could help shape it." Marcus froze, stunned. "Me?" "Yes," Claire said calmly. "You're the one who knows what it's like to be on the other side of the door, facing homelessness, lack of access, judgment. You see the cracks in the system because you've lived between them." Marcus opened the top folder. Inside were documents outlining a new initiative aimed at assisting low-income families and individuals with housing transitions, job readiness programs, and emergency assistance. He skimmed the lines, recognizing both practical ideas and glaring gaps he knew intimately from personal experience. "This is important work," he said quietly. "It is," Claire agreed. "But the board, well, they're comfortable people. They don't always understand the lived reality of those they want to help. Daniel always said the program needed someone who had walked through the fire, not someone who only studied it." Marcus set the thermos down and looked at her. "Why me?" Claire met his gaze without hesitation. "Because Daniel trusted you enough to help you, and I trust what Daniel saw. The words hit him more deeply than he expected. He cleared his throat, feeling his eyes sting. "I'm no expert," he said. "But if my experiences can help someone else, I want to try." Claire smiled, subtle but warm, one of the rare smiles he'd seen on her face. "Good. There's a planning meeting tomorrow afternoon downtown. I'd like you to come, listen, and share your perspective if you feel comfortable." "I'll be there," Marcus said, "as long as it's all right with you." Claire nodded. "It's more than all right." They spent the next hour reviewing the program details. Claire explained the gaps she saw, the goals she wanted to accomplish, and the legacy Daniel hoped to build. Marcus shared stories, some painful, some hopeful, of the people he knew from shelters and community centers. He spoke of fears that lingered long after hunger was gone, of the way pride could trap a man as surely as poverty, of the exhaustion that came from being viewed as a burden rather than a human being. Claire listened intently, taking notes, occasionally looking up with eyes that seemed to see him differently each time he spoke. Later, when she left to make calls at the main house, Marcus stood alone with the folders. He felt something unfamiliar stirring in him, purpose, maybe, or the first glimmer of belonging. That afternoon, while Lena napped, Marcus read through the materials more thoroughly and began jotting down ideas, practical things, necessary things, things no policy writer in a warm office would think of. By evening, he had several pages of notes. Lena woke excited and energetic, asking to play outside in the snow. Marcus bundled her up in the warm coat Harriet had provided, and they walked across the lawn where small drifts had formed near the hedges. Marcus lifted her into the air, her laughter ringing bright against the cold. From the main house window, unseen by them, Claire watched. She pressed her fingers lightly to the glass, a complicated expression on her face, a mix of nostalgia, longing, and something softer that surprised even herself. She remembered the way Daniel used to lift their niece during holidays, spinning her until she shrieked with joy. The sight of Marcus doing the same with his daughter stirred something tender, but it wasn't comparison. It was recognition. Here was a father who loved fiercely, who protected fiercely, who deserved a world that hadn't always served him fairly. After dinner, Marcus put Lena to bed and stepped outside for air. The evening was crisp, the moon faint behind thin clouds. He stood beneath the wind chime that hung near the path leading back to the main house. Its wooden pieces clinked softly when the breeze stirred, gentle notes that felt like the memory of warmth rather than the thing itself. Footsteps approached. Marcus turned to see Claire walking up the path, hands tucked into her coat pockets. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Just thinking," Marcus said. "A lot's happened in a few days." "Yes," she said quietly. "It has." They stood in the soft glow of the porch light, the silence between them not heavy but reflective. "I want you to know something," Claire said finally. "You and Lena being here, it isn't an inconvenience. Not to me." Marcus looked away. "Your brother-in-law doesn't seem to agree. Ryan is," Claire exhaled, "grieving in complicated ways. He feels responsible for Daniel's legacy, and he fears change." Marcus nodded. "I don't want to make things harder for you." "You're not," she said. "You're helping in ways you don't even realize." She met his eyes again. "Tomorrow is important. The board needs to hear from someone like you. Don't hold back." "I'll try," Marcus said. A soft wind lifted the chime, its tone warming the quiet night. Claire glanced toward the sound. "Daniel hung that his last winter," she murmured. "He said the world needed more gentle reminders." "Reminders of what?" Marcus asked. "That kindness doesn't have to be loud," she said. "Sometimes it's a whisper." She turned to leave but paused. "Good night, Marcus." "Good night, Miss Whitmore." "Claire," she corrected softly. "Good night, Claire." She smiled faintly and walked back to the main house. Marcus remained by the chime for a long while, letting its soft, steady music weave into the night. Tomorrow would bring questions, scrutiny, and perhaps judgment from people who saw him as an outsider. But tonight, standing in the quiet glow of a world he never imagined stepping into, he allowed himself one small, dangerous thing: hope. The conference room sat on the 12th floor of the Whitmore Foundation's downtown building. All glass walls and polished walnut. The kind of place where people spoke softly but wielded power loudly. Marcus followed Claire through the double doors, feeling the weight of every footstep. He had worn his cleanest shirt, pressed carefully that morning, but he still felt out of place, an outsider wandering into a world where decisions were made about people like him, not with them. A long table stretched across the room, surrounded by board members in tailored suits, silver watches glinting beneath the lights. Conversations stopped when Marcus entered. Eyes lifted, some curious, some skeptical, one or two clearly disapproving. Claire offered him a reassuring nod before taking her seat at the head of the table. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "Before we review the program revisions, I'd like to introduce someone." She gestured toward Marcus. "This is Marcus Brown. He has lived experience that is directly relevant to the work we do. I've invited him to contribute his perspective today." The room fell into a brittle silence. A man with neatly combed white hair cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitmore, with all due respect, these meetings are usually reserved for board-approved consultants." Claire didn't blink. "I'm aware. And today, he is one." The man sat back but did not look pleased. Marcus could feel his pulse in his throat, but he drew a steadying breath. He wasn't here for approval. He was here because someone Daniel once believed he mattered. A woman in a red scarf leaned forward, softening her tone slightly. "Mr. Brown, would you mind sharing how you came to know Daniel?" Marcus clasped his hands. 3 years ago, I was living in my car with my daughter. My job had fallen through, and I couldn't make rent. Most people avoided us. Some called the police. But your founder, he didn't treat me like a threat. He treated me like a man who needed help." Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Marcus continued. "He gave us a room for the night. Food. A way forward. It didn't fix everything, but it changed everything." He felt Claire watching him, her expression unreadable, but attentive. "Programs like this matter," Marcus said, "but they miss things. Real things. Like the fact that people don't ask for help until they're drowning. Or that one mistake can follow you longer than any success. Or that even when you do everything right, the world still tells you you're not enough." A tall man at the far end of the table interjected, "Mr. Brown, these are very personal experiences. We're looking for scalable policies, not individual testimonials." Marcus swallowed, steadying himself. "Policies don't work if they ignore the people they're for. You want to build something Daniel would be proud of? Then start by listening, not to me, but to people like me, people you'd never otherwise meet unless they were sweeping your floors." The words hung in the air like an unexpected gust of wind. Claire's lips pressed into what might have been the ghost of a smile, but another voice spoke up, smooth, practiced, and immediately recognizable. "So this is the man my brother helped." Ryan entered the room, closing the door behind him with a quiet finality. He wore a charcoal suit, impeccably pressed, and a look of cool appraisal. Claire tensed. "Ryan, you weren't scheduled to join today. I rescheduled," he said simply, taking an empty seat. "I wanted to hear from Mr. Brown myself." Marcus felt a familiar discomfort crawl up his spine. Ryan folded his hands. "You say you want to improve the program. Admirable. But I'm sure you understand why some of us are cautious." He tapped a folder in front of him. "I've taken the liberty of reviewing your background." A ripple of unease passed through the room. Claire's eyes flashed with irritation. "Ryan, I'm not trying to embarrass anyone," Ryan said, though the intent lingered beneath the surface. "But transparency is important, especially when someone is influencing decisions for this foundation." He opened the folder. Past due medical bills, eviction record, an unresolved dispute with a landlord, and a police incident involving a verbal altercation outside a gas station. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest, not anger at the facts, but at the implication. "You make it sound like a resume of failure," Marcus said quietly. "Those are the scars of trying to survive. They're also indicators of instability. Ryan countered. We can't risk associating the Whitmore Foundation with someone who could be seen as what? Marcus asked, voice steady. As someone who doesn't belong here? The room stiffened. Claire spoke sharply. Enough, Ryan. But Ryan continued. I'm protecting Daniel's legacy. He believed in kindness. Yes, but he also believed in discernment. Marcus exhaled slowly. Your brother didn't ask for my resume when he helped me. He saw a father trying to keep his child warm. He didn't see me as a liability. Ryan held his gaze. My brother isn't here to defend that choice. No, Marcus said softly. He isn't. But your grief doesn't give you permission to rewrite who he was. The room fell silent. Claire closed her eyes briefly, as if steadying herself, then addressed the board. What Marcus shared today is exactly why he belongs in this conversation. Lived experience matters, humanity matters, and this foundation, Daniel's foundation, exists to honor that. A few board members nodded. Others looked away, but the balance of the room had shifted subtly, undeniably. After the meeting adjourned, Claire pulled Marcus aside into a quieter hallway. You handled that well, she said. I could have done better, Marcus murmured. I shouldn't have let him get under my skin. He was trying to, Claire said. Ryan thinks he's protecting me, but sometimes protection becomes a cage. Marcus studied her expression, the exhaustion there, the quiet resilience. I'm sorry for causing tension between you two. You didn't cause it, she said. It was already there. You just revealed a crack we've avoided looking at. They walked toward the elevator. As they stepped inside, Claire spoke again, her voice softer. Daniel once told me that true justice isn't loud, it's consistent. Today, you were consistent with truth, with honesty, with who you are. That matters. Marcus felt something warm settle in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Worth. But as they exited the lobby, Ryan stood near the door, speaking quietly with one of the board members. He didn't look at Marcus, yet Marcus felt the weight of his presence like a shadow. Ryan wasn't finished, and as Marcus stepped into the cold afternoon air, he sensed the subtle shift in the wind, a warning that the hardest part of his journey inside this world had only just begun. The drive back to the estate was quiet, the kind of quiet that wasn't empty but thick-weighted with thoughts left unspoken. Claire kept her eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel, though Marcus could tell she was replaying the meeting in her mind, sorting through each word, each tension-filled moment. Marcus watched the city fade behind them, replaced by stretches of fir trees and snow-coated lawns. He sat with his hands clasped loosely, the sting of Ryan's accusation still lingering beneath his ribs. He wasn't embarrassed by his past. Not really. He had survived it. But having it dissected in a room of strangers who had never missed a meal, that was something else. You shouldn't have had to hear that, Claire said suddenly, breaking the silence. Ryan had no right. He had every right, Marcus replied quietly. I stepped into your world. He's protecting what he thinks belongs to him. I get it. That doesn't make it fair. Fairness is a luxury people like me don't get often. Claire inhaled sharply, as if the truth of that hurt her more than she expected. Still, she said, you handled yourself with more dignity than that room deserved. Marcus looked out the window. I wasn't trying to impress them. I just wanted to show the truth. That's all I have. Claire slowed as she turned into the long driveway. Snow crunched softly beneath the tires. Sometimes truth is exactly what people like them need, she said. But it also terrifies them. They don't like to see the consequences of the world they built. Marcus didn't reply, but he felt the weight of her words settle into him. When they pulled up near the guest house, Lena came bounding out into the cold air, wearing the puffy jacket Harriet had chosen for her. Daddy, she cried, running toward him. Harriet helped me make cookies. Marcus scooped her up, her warmth a balm to everything the day had pressed into him. Cookies? He teased. Without me? She giggled. We saved you one. Behind her, Harriet waved from the doorway, flour dusting her apron. Claire's expression softened at the sight, a tired smile settling onto her lips. She seems happy, Claire said. She is, Marcus replied. Then, noticing the fatigue in Claire's posture, he added, "You should rest. Today was a lot." Claire nodded slightly. "I will." She hesitated, then placed a hand briefly on Marcus's arm, a small gesture, but it carried something gentle, almost grateful. "Thank you for being brave today. It mattered more than you know." He opened his mouth to respond, but she had already turned toward the main house, her boots crunching softly through the snow. As she disappeared from view, Marcus felt both gratitude and unease twist inside him. Helping her, helping the foundation, he wanted to. But Ryan's warning glare replayed in his mind like a flashing caution sign. When he and Lena stepped back inside the guest house, the warmth enveloped them instantly. The air purifier hummed softly, and the smell of cookies lingered in the air. Lena climbed onto the couch and offered him a small, oddly shaped cookie. "This one's yours," she said proudly. "It's kinda squished." Marcus took a bite. "Best cookie I ever had." She beamed. As evening settled in, Marcus tucked Lena into bed. She was asleep before he finished smoothing her blanket. He lingered a moment, watching her breathe steady, peaceful, safe. He whispered, "This is all I ever wanted for you." Then he quietly stepped outside, needing air, needing space for thoughts that felt too big for the small guest house walls. The night was cold, crisp enough to sting his lungs. Snow lined the hedges like white lace. From the main house, soft light spilled from the library windows. Marcus walked toward the small stone bench beneath the cedar tree, the place where he'd stood the first night here, overwhelmed by everything he didn't understand. A voice broke the quiet. "You handled yourself well today." Marcus turned. Ryan stood several feet away, coat buttoned sharply, hands in his pockets. His breath fogged the air. Marcus stiffened but kept his tone even. "Didn't know you were out here." "This is my brother's home," Ryan said. "I walk the grounds often. Helps me think." "Must be nice," Marcus replied. Having space to think, Ryan's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're defensive." "I'm honest," Marcus countered. "There's a difference." Ryan stepped closer, the snow crunching under his shoes. "I need you to understand something. Mr. Brown, this estate, this foundation, everything Claire is trying to preserve, it's fragile right now. She's vulnerable. Daniel's death shattered her in ways she doesn't show. I know she's grieving. I'm not trying to take anything from her. Perhaps not intentionally," Ryan said, "but trouble has a way of following instability." Marcus felt his blood heat. "You read my file. You think that's who I am now?" "I think people don't change as much as they claim," Ryan said, "and I think my brother helped you out of goodwill, not as an invitation into this family's world." "I never asked to be part of this world," Marcus said, voice low. "I asked for help for my daughter, that's it. If you want me gone, say it." Ryan held his gaze for a long moment, searching for something: weakness, guilt, an admission. "I want clarity," Ryan said, "and I want to protect Claire from making emotional decisions that will cost her. I'm not her responsibility." "You are," Ryan said, "as long as you're here." Marcus swallowed hard. "Then I'll make it simple. Once Lena is stronger, we'll leave. You won't have to worry about us." Something flickered in Ryan's eyes, relief, maybe. "Good," he said quietly. "That's wise." With that, he turned and walked toward the main house, his figure retreating into the golden glow of the windows. Marcus stood frozen, breath shaking in the cold air. He felt as if he'd been pushed into a corner he didn't choose. He turned toward the guest house, but before he could take a step, the faintest sound caught his ear, the familiar chime of wooden bells drifting softly from the porch. He looked toward the main house and saw Claire standing inside the library window, watching him. Her face was unreadable, not anger, not pity, but a deep, searching concern. She wasn't supposed to hear what had passed between him and Ryan, but from the look in her eyes, Marcus knew she had heard more than enough, and whatever she thought he was, guest, burden, ally, or something else entirely, The night had shifted something between all three of them. The next chapter of his life here would not be simple, but then again, nothing worth changing ever was. Claire did not come to the guest house the next morning. Marcus had expected she might, perhaps to check on Lena, perhaps to clarify what she overheard, but the hours passed quietly, too quietly, the kind of quiet that suggested distance, not rest. Marcus tried not to think about it as he made breakfast for Lena, but the silence pressed into him all the same. He sensed a shift, a tightening in the air around the estate, as if some invisible line had been drawn overnight. Lena, cheerful as ever, seemed blissfully unaware. She hummed to herself while eating cereal, swinging her legs beneath the chair. "Daddy, can we go play in the snow later?" "Maybe," Marcus said, though his mind was far away. "We'll see how the day goes." She studied him with those perceptive eyes of hers. "Are you okay?" He forced a smile. "I'm fine, baby." But children recognized cracks adults pretended weren't there. After breakfast, Harriet came by with fresh linens and a warm smile, but Marcus noticed the subtle way her expression changed, just for a second, when she gently asked, "Everything all right between you and Mrs. Whitmore?" "Of course," Marcus said quickly. "Why wouldn't it be?" Harriet hesitated. "She just seemed troubled this morning. Quiet, more than usual." Marcus's stomach tightened. He nodded gratefully as Harriet left, but the question burrowed deeper. Had Claire pulled back because of Ryan, or because of something she feared about herself, or about him? By midday, Marcus couldn't take the uncertainty any longer. He walked across the snow-covered lawn toward the main house, each step crunching sharp beneath his boots. He rehearsed what he might say, apologize, clarify, reassure, but none of the words felt right. When he reached the front door, he paused. It felt monumental, like knocking on the door of a life he had no right to enter. He lifted his hand, then froze when the door opened unexpectedly. Ryan stood there, phone in hand. His expression hardened instantly. "Can I help you?" Marcus steadied himself. "I need to speak with Claire. She's busy. I won't take long." Ryan stepped into the doorway, blocking the entrance. "Marcus, let me give you some advice. When someone is offering temporary charity, it's wise not to mistake it for personal attachment." Marcus kept his voice calm, though a heat rose inside him. "I don't think that's what's happening." "Don't you?" Ryan folded his arms. "You think because she listens to you, because she shows sympathy, that it means something? Claire is vulnerable, which is exactly why I'm here, to make sure certain lines aren't crossed." "I would never take advantage of her," Marcus said. "But you're already taking more than you realize," Ryan replied. "Her time, her attention, her emotional energy, all while you offer nothing she can rely on." "I didn't ask for any of this." "No," Ryan said. "But you didn't refuse it either." Marcus felt the sting of that. He thought of the warm bed Lena now slept in, the meals, the safety. His gratitude felt suddenly like a chain, but before he could answer, a voice came from inside. "Ryan, move." Claire appeared behind him, her face pale but composed, her eyes fixed sharply on Ryan. He stepped aside reluctantly. Claire stepped forward. "Marcus, come in." Relief washed through him, but also worry. Something in her voice sounded strained. They walked to the library, where the fire burned low and the air smelled faintly of cedar. Claire closed the door behind them. "I want to apologize," she said softly, surprising him. "For what you heard last night." "You don't need to apologize," Marcus said. "Your family is grieving. I don't want to make things harder." "But you didn't make anything harder," Claire said. Ryan crossed a line. Marcus looked down at his hands. "He's not entirely wrong. This is your home, your world. I don't belong here." Claire's eyes lifted sharply. "Don't say that." "It's true. Marcus, listen to me." She stepped closer. "You and Lena needed help. I offered help. That's not an imbalance. That's compassion. But compassion creates complications," Marcus said. especially when the people around you don't understand it. Claire looked away for a moment, her jaw tightening. Ryan thinks he's protecting me. He doesn't realize that sometimes his protection hurts more than it helps. Marcus hesitated, then asked quietly, "What do you think? Do you want us here? Or do you feel obligated?" Claire drew a long breath. "I want you here," she said simply, "not out of obligation, not out of guilt. Because helping you feels right. Because Daniel would have wanted it. And because—" She stopped herself. Marcus waited. Claire's voice softened. "Because your presence brings something into this house that's been missing since he died. Something alive, genuine, human." The words struck him more deeply than he expected. He swallowed, unsure how to respond. Claire stepped back slightly, gathering herself. "But I also know this situation is complicated. And Ryan won't stop pushing until he feels he's regained control." Marcus nodded slowly. "What do you want me to do?" "Stay," she said. "At least until we're sure Lena is fully recovered. Don't let Ryan scare you away from something good." Marcus exhaled shakily. "I'll stay as long as it's best for her." Claire nodded. "That's all I ask." Their eyes held for a moment steady, unguarded, something fragile forming between them that neither reached for, but neither pulled away from. Then Harriet appeared at the doorway, apologetic. "Mrs. Whitmore?" A call from the attorney's office. "They say it's urgent." Claire's expression tightened instantly, the warmth replaced by worry. "I'll take it in my study." She turned back to Marcus. "We'll talk more later." "Of course." But as she walked away, her shoulders stiff and tense, Marcus felt the uneasy twist of something shifting beneath the surface, a new conflict rising, one he couldn't yet name. He stepped back into the cold air, heading toward the guest house. Snow fell lightly around him, soft and silent. But inside the main house, a storm had begun brewing, one that would draw all three of their lives into its center before any of them had time to prepare. The storm arrived not with thunder but with Claire's silence. She did not return to the guest house that evening, nor the next morning. Harriet dropped by with breakfast, but Marcus could see the tension in her movements, the way her eyes darted toward the main house before she caught herself. "Everything all right?" Marcus asked carefully. Harriet offered a thin smile. "Mrs. Whitmore's been on calls since last night. Legal calls. Estate business, I think." "Estate business?" Harriet hesitated, adjusting the tray in her hands. "Sometimes grief wakes sleeping problems. That's all I'll say." Then she added, more softly, "If she seems distant, don't take it to heart. She carries too much alone." After she left, Marcus sat at the kitchen table staring at the cold coffee beside him, feeling unease creep slowly into his bones. Lena played quietly on the floor, humming to herself. Occasionally she looked up, sensing her father's distraction. "Daddy, are you worried?" Marcus forced a smile. "Just thinking, sweetheart." "About Miss Whitmore?" His breath caught. Children always saw more than they were given credit for. "She helped us," Lena said. "We can help her back." Marcus touched her cheek, marveling at her innocence. Maybe we can, but he didn't know how. By midday, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfolding without him, and maybe because of him. He waited until Lena was napping before walking across the snowy path to the main house. The sky hung gray, heavy with winter light. As he approached the front door, voices drifted from inside, low, urgent, heated. He hesitated before knocking. The door opened abruptly before he could lift his hand. Ryan stood there, his expression sharp as cut stone. "We're in the middle of something," he said. "Come back later." Marcus held his ground. "Is Claire all right?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "This doesn't concern you." Claire's voice floated from deeper within the house. "Ryan, let him in." Her voice sounded tired. Too tired. Ryan stepped aside reluctantly. Marcus entered and followed Claire's voice to the study. Papers were spread across the large wooden desk. Legal documents, letters, official seals. Claire stood near the fireplace, arms crossed tightly, her eyes fixed on the floor as though the flames were speaking truths she didn't want to face. When she finally looked up, her expression unsettled him, strong, but fragile at the edges. "Is something wrong?" Marcus asked quietly. "Yes," Claire said. "Something is very wrong." Ryan stepped into the room, closing the door with deliberate precision. "It seems," he began, fixing his gaze on Marcus, "that my brother made changes to his will 2 months before he died, changes none of us knew about." Marcus blinked, unsure what to say. Claire continued, "The attorney called to inform me of an addendum that had been overlooked until now. According to Daniel's wishes, 30% of his personal assets were designated for the community center's expansion." Marcus nodded slowly. That sounded consistent with the man he'd known, briefly generous, forward-thinking. Claire exhaled shakily. But another clause allocated emergency aid to be given specifically to families that Daniel had personally encountered or supported. Now Marcus's breath caught. "Meaning?" Ryan spoke flatly. "Meaning you, Mr. Brown." Silence filled the room like water rising in a sealed space. Claire pressed a hand to her forehead. "Money, housing support, medical aid for Lena. He set up a fund. For you." Marcus felt the world tilt. "That doesn't make sense," he whispered. "He helped us once. He barely knew me." Claire shook her head. "He knew enough. He told his attorney you reminded him of someone of himself when he was young, someone who just needed one door to open." Marcus stared at the documents, disbelief tightening every muscle. "I didn't ask for this." "We know," Claire said gently, "but the legal obligation exists." Ryan stepped forward, his tone cutting through the room like cold wind. "This is exactly why I warned you, Claire. He's already entangled in the center, and now he's tied to Daniel's legacy financially. You think the board won't question the optics? You think the press won't sniff around if they find out?" Claire's eyes flashed with anger. "This is not about optics. This is about honoring Daniel's intentions. And what if his intentions were clouded by sentiment?" Ryan countered. "We don't know what he was thinking in the final months. He wasn't well." Marcus shook his head. "Stop." The word came out stronger than he expected. "Don't put this on him. He wasn't confused. He saw someone struggling and wanted to help. That's who he was." Ryan glared. "Easy for you to say when you stand to benefit." Marcus stepped closer, voice low, trembling not with fear but conviction. "If you think I want to take anything from his legacy, you're wrong. I didn't want his money. I didn't even want to call Claire for help. All I wanted was for my daughter to breathe." Claire's expression softened with grief and guilt. But Ryan was unmoved. "Intentions aside, this creates a crisis," he said. "A legal, financial, and reputational crisis. Claire, this man's past will become public record if this fund is enacted. His history, his eviction, the police incident. The narrative writes itself." Marcus felt shame burn his chest, not because of his truth, but because of the way it was wielded like a weapon. "Then I'll refuse it," he said abruptly. Claire looked startled. "Marcus." "No, I won't take anything that hurts you or the foundation. Daniel helped me once, and that was enough. I won't let his kindness become a burden." Claire stepped forward, her voice trembling. "He did this for you. You can't reject his generosity." "Watch me," Marcus said softly. "Some gifts cost too much to accept." The room fell into a tense stillness. Ryan folded his arms. "Good. At least he understands the implications." Claire rounded on him. "This isn't victory, Ryan." Turning to Marcus, she said, "You shouldn't make this decision out of fear." "I'm making it for my daughter," Marcus replied. "She needs stability, not headlines, not scrutiny." Claire looked at him with eyes full of conflict, admiration, and sorrow mingled together. "You're doing the right thing for the wrong reasons," she whispered. "Or the wrong thing for the right reasons." Marcus could barely hold her gaze. He turned toward the door. "I should go check on Lena." "Marcus, wait," Claire said. But he couldn't. Not yet. Not with the room closing in. not with Ryan watching every move like a judge waiting for a verdict. He stepped out into the cold, letting the icy air hit his face like a cleansing shock. For the first time since arriving at the estate, the warmth that had sheltered him now felt uncertain. He walked back toward the guest house, each step weighted with the realization that the fragile refuge he had stumbled into might soon crumble. Not from malice, but from the complicated knots of grief, legacy, and truth none of them were prepared to unravel. Inside, Lena stirred in her sleep, unaware of the storm building around her father. Marcus sat beside her and whispered into the dim quiet, "I won't let anything take your peace away. Not ever." But the night outside the window carried a truth he couldn't ignore. Peace was no longer guaranteed, and the path ahead, whatever it held, was narrowing quickly. Snow fell harder that night, drifting in thick white curtains that blurred the edges of the world. From the window of the guest house, Marcus watched the wind sweep it across the lawn, erasing footprints as quickly as they formed. It felt like a message, gentle, cold, and merciless. Nothing stays untouched forever. Lena slept peacefully beside her stuffed rabbit, her breath steady. At least she was safe. At least she was warm. Marcus brushed a hand over her curls and stood, pacing the small room as thoughts churned inside him. Rejecting Daniel's fund felt right morally, instinctively, but it also rippled outward in ways he couldn't control. Claire had looked at him as if he were dropping something fragile she had handed him with trembling hands. And Ryan would use this moment, twist it, weaponize it. The storm outside deepened, rattling the windows. A sudden knock echoed through the quiet. Marcus stiffened. No one should be visiting at this hour. He opened the door a crack and saw Claire standing there, snow clinging to her coat, breath fogging the air. Her eyes looked fierce, tired, and determined all at once. "Marcus," she said softly, "we need to talk." He stepped aside. Claire entered, brushing snow from her hair. For a long moment she didn't speak. She seemed to absorb the room, the warmth, the smallness, the evidence of the life Marcus had carved in the few days he'd been here. Finally, she turned to him. "You can't refuse Daniel's gift." Marcus exhaled. "Claire, I'm not trying to dishonor him, but accepting that money will put a spotlight on me, on my past, on my daughter. I won't let that happen." "You're not the only person affected by this," Claire said, her voice trembling slightly. "Daniel didn't make that fund out of pity. He made it because he believed in something. In you, in fairness, in second chances. If you refuse it, it's like saying he was wrong." Marcus shook his head. "No, I'm saying the world he trusted isn't ready." Claire stepped closer. "Then we make it ready." Marcus stared at her. "You think that's possible?" "I have to." She glanced at the window, where snow pressed thick against the glass. "I've lived in this house, surrounded by silence for months. Everything felt like it was turning to ice. And then you and Lena walked in, and suddenly, I felt alive again. Like something was shifting. Like the world wasn't done with me." Marcus's breath caught. He hadn't expected this raw honesty, not now, not from her. "Claire, you think you're the burden in this story," she said. "But you're the one who reminded me why Daniel did the work he did. You reminded me to feel again." Marcus swallowed hard. "That doesn't change what people will say if this comes out." "People will say what they want," Claire said. "But my responsibility is to the truth. And the truth is that Daniel wanted to help you, and I want to help you. Not out of charity, out of something deeper." Marcus searched her face. Not romantic longing, not yet, but a recognition. A bond forged in shared grief, shared struggle, shared hope. "Claire, I don't want to cause more trouble for you." "You're not," she whispered. "Ryan is." As if summoned by his name, the front door of the guest house burst open. Ryan stood in the doorway, snow swirling around him like a storm following him inside. His face was pale with fury. "Claire, what are you doing?" His eyes snapped to Marcus. "And you stay away from her." Marcus held his ground. "I'm not doing anything. This is manipulation," Ryan said sharply. "He's using you, Claire. Can't you see that? He rejected the fund so you would chase after him. It's a power move. Stop, Claire said, stepping forward. You're not listening. No, Ryan snapped. You're not listening. If this fund goes public, the foundation will face scrutiny it can't afford. Donors will walk away. Everything Daniel built will collapse. And all because of him. Don't put this on Marcus, Claire said. He didn't ask for any of this. He didn't refuse the help until after he realized how much it would implicate you, Ryan said. Convenient. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest, anger, shame, exhaustion twisting together. You don't know anything about me, he said. And you don't want to. Ryan stepped toward him. I know trouble when I see it. Claire moved between them. Enough. Her voice shook with anger. Stop treating him like he's stealing something. Daniel helped him because he believed Marcus deserved better. And I agree. Ryan stared at her, stunned by the intensity in her voice. Claire continued, quieter but stronger. This isn't just about money, Ryan. It's about what kind of people we are, what kind of legacy Daniel left for us. If we hide from his choices, we betray him. Ryan's expression faltered. For the first time, uncertainty cracked through his anger. But then he hardened again. And what about the family? Our reputation? The board? To hell with the board, Claire said softly. And if the family can't understand compassion, then maybe we've forgotten who Daniel really was. Ryan looked at her as if he didn't recognize her. Snow melted on his coat, dripping onto the floor. Marcus watched them, two grieving people trying to wrestle meaning from loss. But Claire's voice was steady now, firm as winter steel. Marcus stays, she said. And the fund stands. We will manage the optics. We will face whatever comes. But we will honor Daniel's wishes. Ryan looked between them, Claire's resolve, Marcus's quiet strength, and something in him finally broke. You're making a mistake, he whispered. A terrible one. Maybe, Claire said, but it will be my mistake to make. Ryan turned and left without another word, the door slamming behind him. Snow-laden wind rushed briefly into the room before fading into silence. Claire exhaled, trembling slightly. Marcus stepped closer, uncertain but moved. You didn't have to defend me like that. I wasn't defending you, Claire said softly. I was defending what's right. She looked up at him, eyes bright. You deserve help without shame. Lena deserves safety. And I deserve to follow the truth instead of fear. Marcus felt emotion choke him. He reached, hesitated, then gently touched her hand. She didn't pull away. Outside, the storm began to ease, clouds parting just enough for a faint glow of moonlight to touch the snow. Inside, the air warmed with the quiet acknowledgement of something new, something fragile, something powerful, taking shape between them. It wasn't romance, not yet. It wasn't obligation or charity. It was something deeper. Trust. A trust neither of them had expected to find in the coldest winter of their lives. Claire squeezed his hand once, then whispered, We'll face this together. Marcus nodded. For the first time in years, he believed he might not be facing tomorrow alone.